Welcome to Movies Unlocked. Today we are talking about the movie October Sky, released in 1999 and based on a true story. The story follows Homer Hickam, who grew up in a small and remote coal mining town. In this town, most people believed that working in the coal mine was their destiny. Almost every boy expected to work in the same mine as his father. Anyone who dreamed of something different was often criticized by society. But Homer was different. He didn't want to spend his whole life in the coal mine like his father. Instead, he dreamed of leaving the town and building a better future. However, escaping Coalwood was not easy. For boys in that town, the best way to get into college was through sports scholarships. Unfortunately, Homer was not athletic like his older brother and couldn't make the school football team. Seeing this, Homer's father advised him that after graduating he should work with him in the coal mine. Hearing this made Homer very disappointed, especially because his grades were also not very good. Then one night, everything changed. The world's first artificial satellite appeared in the sky, and the whole town gathered to watch it. Even after everyone left, Homer kept staring at the sky. At that moment, a new dream was born in his heart, building rockets. When he told his family, his brother laughed at him, but his mother supported him. The next day, Homer built a small cylinder filled with gunpowder and tried his first rocket experiment. The explosion frightened his mother and damaged the fence. That was when Homer realized he needed to learn more about rocket science. He went to the library searching for books about rockets, but in a coal town such books were impossible to find. There he noticed a student named Quentin, who was very intelligent but usually stayed alone. Other students avoided him, but Homer approached him and started talking about rockets. To his surprise, Quentin was deeply interested in rocket science, and he began helping Homer learn more about it. In this way, Homer and Quentin developed a strong friendship, and their journey of building rockets began. Homer invited his friends to the basement of his house. The boys formed a small team and divided themselves into different groups, each with specific responsibilities. Within a few days, they managed to build a simple model rocket using an iron pipe and a broomstick. However, one major problem remained. The rocket's nozzle had to be welded, which was the most important step for the rocket to fly. Homer had no choice but to ask Dyson for help. Dyson was one of his father's co-workers at the coal mine. At first, Dyson hesitated. He warned Homer that if his father found out, he might lose his job. But when Homer explained how important this dream was to him, Dyson decided to help. Ignoring the risk, he welded the nozzle for them. The next day, the boys proudly looked at their beautifully welded rocket and were excited to launch it. But suddenly the school principal arrived and ordered them to destroy the rocket, saying it was dangerous. Just then their science teacher, Miss Riley, arrived and told the principal that the rocket was part of a science project for the science fair. Hearing this, the principal asked no further questions. Homer became very interested in the science fair. However, Quentin believed such competitions were only for rich students and that they would never get the chance to win a scholarship. Curious, he followed Miss Riley and asked if what she said about scholarships was really true. Miss Riley replied that such competitions required hard work and dedication, qualities she claimed they didn't have. But in reality, she said this only to motivate Homer from within. Soon afterward, the four friends went to test their rocket, which they named Puffin. Homer lit the fuse, and within seconds the rocket shot into the sky. For a moment it felt like their dream had come true. But suddenly the rocket changed direction and began heading straight toward the coal mining area. Seeing this, Homer's friends immediately ran away in fear. However, Homer was worried that the rocket might hurt someone. Without wasting any time, he ran toward the coal mine. When he reached there, his father was already waiting for him, extremely angry. In front of everyone, he scolded Homer harshly and threw his rocket into the trash. That night at home, Homer complained to his mother. He said that whenever his brother made mistakes, their father never became this angry. It seemed to him that the coal mine was the only thing that truly mattered to his father. But his father overheard their conversation. He said that the coal mine was indeed important, but Homer was still too young to understand. Someday he would realize why it mattered so much. However, Homer stubbornly replied that he would never work in the coal mine. After this argument, Homer went down to the basement. There he noticed that all the materials they had collected for building rockets were gone. Feeling frustrated, he stepped outside into the rain and began collecting the scattered pieces. Those broken parts looked like shattered pieces of his dream, especially after the failed launch of Puffin. His friends also started losing hope. They believed their future had already been decided and that they would eventually end up working in the mines. Soon their disappointment turned into arguments. Suddenly the sound of a car stopped their fight. They saw a boy around their age driving a luxurious car with his girlfriend beside him. Seeing the difference between their lives made them feel even more discouraged. But Homer refused to give up. He gathered the remaining materials and began searching for a new place to continue their experiments. After walking for a while, he saw his friends arriving in a truck. They apologized for their behavior and decided to help him again. Together, they started looking for another launch site. After traveling several miles, they finally found a large open field. There they raised a flag and built a new observation area along with a proper launching pad. No matter how difficult the journey ahead might be, Homer was not ready to give up on his dream so easily. Homer knew this could be the only chance to change his life. Soon afterward, in the chemistry lab, Quentin and Homer worked together to develop a new fuel for their rocket. After several attempts, they finally created a different fuel mixture and were excited to test it. However, when they launched the rocket again, it once more changed direction and began heading toward a man who had come to watch their experiment. Luckily, the man jumped aside at the right moment and avoided getting hurt. Homer immediately ran toward him to apologize. Surprisingly, the man was not angry at all. Instead, he told them that he had once been a pilot. Watching the rocket reminded him of the days when he used to fly through the sky. Using his years of experience, he noticed that something seemed wrong with the lower part of their rocket. He suggested that they should use steel that could withstand very high temperatures. But money was a major problem for the boys. They had no choice except to take steel from an abandoned railway track. Working together, they managed to remove a section of the rail. But suddenly they heard the sound of an approaching train. Panicking, they quickly put the rail back in place and ran toward the train, trying to stop it. The train did not stop, but fortunately it moved on to another track. With the new material, Homer went back to Dyson for welding help. But by that time Dyson had already disappeared. Later Homer learned from the workers that his father had fired Dyson from the company. With no other option left, Homer decided to learn welding himself. Meanwhile, the rest of the team prepared for another test flight. But this attempt turned out even worse than the previous one. Some rockets barely rose into the air, while others exploded immediately. Even so, they kept returning to the railway tracks to gather more material and continued experimenting. After analyzing several failures, Quentin finally realized something important. He believed the explosions were being caused by air bubbles forming inside the rocket's fuel chamber. After doing some research, the boys improved their fuel formula and eventually created a thicker, more stable fuel mixture. Everything was finally ready, and this time they felt confident about their rocket launch. Miss Riley came along to support them, but when they arrived at the launch site, they were surprised to see a large crowd already gathered there. They soon realized that many of the people had been invited by Homer's brother just to watch them fail and make fun of them. The pressure on the boys increased. If the rocket failed again, they would become the laughingstock of the entire town. Seeing Homer's nervousness, Miss Riley reassured him. She told him that he didn't have to prove anything to anyone. His courage alone was already greater than those who doubted him. With uncertainty in his heart, Homer finally ignited the rocket. The rest of the group quickly ran back to the observation room. Once everything was ready, Homer pulled the trigger. Everyone inside the room watched as the rocket launched into the sky. To their surprise, the rocket did not explode or change direction. Instead, it flew straight upward. All the hard work they had put in day and night had finally paid off. Even the people who had come to mock them now applauded their success. Miss Riley felt extremely proud of the boys. However, Homer's father still did not recognize his achievement. That same day was Homer's birthday. As a gift, Miss Riley gave him a book about rocket science. When Homer returned home, he noticed that his brother had received a football scholarship. After congratulating him, Homer quietly went to his room, trying to escape the emptiness he felt around him. A few days later, Homer invited his father to watch another rocket launch, but his father refused again, saying he was busy with work. With everyone watching, Homer pulled the ignition switch. The rocket launched higher than ever before, reaching new heights in the sky. The successful launch amazed the people watching, including his mother. Soon the achievement attracted media attention, and their story appeared on the front page of newspapers, becoming the main topic of discussion throughout the school. Suddenly, the principal arrived with the police. When Miss Riley heard the news, she rushed to the office, but by the time she arrived, the boys had already been handcuffed. The police had found one of their rockets in the forest and concluded that the boys were responsible for the fire that had occurred the previous week. When they were questioned, Homer and his friends had no explanation. One of their rockets had gone missing after a launch, and because of that they were arrested in front of the entire school. Later, Homer's father managed to get them released on bail. That same night, a serious accident happened in the coal mine. Homer ran toward the mine and saw that Dyson, the welder who had helped him earlier, had died in the accident. His father was lying on a stretcher after being injured. One of the workers told Homer that if his father had not acted quickly, many more miners might have died that night. Looking at the entrance of the mine, Homer felt an even stronger hatred for that dark pit. Although his father survived, he could not work in the mine for some time. Someone had to replace him, otherwise the family might lose both his job and their home. Homer's brother offered to take their father's place, but that would mean losing his sports scholarship and the chance to go to college. To protect his brother's dream, Homer decided to work in the mine himself. It seemed that the life his father wanted for him was finally becoming reality. Later, Homer and his friends returned to the place where their dream had once begun. There, Homer set the observation room and the launching pad on fire. All the hard work they had done day and night turned into smoke within moments. After that, he went to school and removed his name from the science exhibition, which made Miss Riley deeply disappointed. Soon Homer began working in the coal mine with the other miners. While everyone walked with their heads down, Homer was the only one looking up at the sky. The same satellite that had once awakened his dreams was still shining brightly among the stars. As the elevator slowly descended into the mine, the distance between Homer and the stars above seemed to grow even greater. While the miners bent down to begin their work, Homer felt his heart becoming heavier with every passing moment. For the first time in his life, he began to truly understand how difficult his father's work had always been. Sometimes his friends came to visit him inside the mine. They believed that Homer had already given up on his dream long ago, but none of them could see the sadness hidden deep inside him. After recovering from his injuries, Homer's father finally returned home. He thanked Homer for the sacrifice he had made for the family and suggested that he should go back to school and continue his education. But Homer refused to return. Later, when his father went back to the mine, many workers praised Homer's skills in front of him. They said that Homer had a natural talent for coal mining. However, none of them realized how unhappy he truly felt inside. One day, when Homer returned home after work, his mother shared heartbreaking news. Miss Riley had become seriously ill, and the doctors believed she had very little time left to live. Hearing this, Homer immediately rode his bicycle to visit her. Even in her fragile condition, Miss Riley remained hopeful and calm. She spoke to Homer about his future and encouraged him not to blindly follow the expectations of others. Instead, she advised him to trust his own instincts and pursue the dream that truly belonged to him. She also told him that no matter what path he chose in life, she would always be proud of him. Homer was already feeling uncertain about the decisions he had made, but her words filled him with a new sense of hope. That night he could not sleep. He opened the rocketry book she had once given him and began reading it again. Ideas started flowing through his mind. He began calculating the rocket's height and range, and after several days of research and careful analysis, he finally determined the likely direction where the missing rocket might have landed. This discovery slowly brought Homer closer to the dream he once thought he had lost forever. Homer went to Quentin for help and entered the bedroom where Quentin was studying late at night. When Quentin saw Homer's calculations, he was completely amazed. The two spent the entire night checking the numbers again and again. After hours of calculations and discussions, they finally figured out where the missing rocket had most likely landed. Early the next morning, the two boys went back to their testing base. Carefully measuring the distance step by step, they moved from the open field toward the forest. By the afternoon, they finally found the remains of their rocket in a small stream. They took the rocket back to school, where Homer demonstrated his mathematical calculations to the principal. The students were astonished. The same boys who were once considered underachievers were now using mathematics to determine the rocket's trajectory. Later, when they went to the police station, they discovered something surprising. The forest fire had actually been caused by an aviation flare, not their rocket. The truth was finally revealed, and the principal admitted that he had misunderstood the boys. He instructed Homer to return to school and even recommended him and his team to represent the school at the science fair. Excited once again, Homer and his friends returned to the basement to prepare their project. But suddenly Homer's father arrived with a serious expression. He told the other boys to go home and ordered Homer to return to work in the coal mine. However, Homer remained determined. At that moment, his father realized that the life he had planned for his son was not the life Homer truly wanted. Without saying another word, he quietly left the room. Soon the science fair began as planned, and the boys were declared champions, earning the chance to represent their school in the National Science and Technology Competition. By then, they had become the pride of the entire town. But the principal then announced that due to limited school funds, only one student could travel to the competition. Without hesitation, the boys chose Homer. The next day, Homer's friends gathered to see him off as he boarded the bus for the science fair. The event brought together some of the brightest young scientific minds from across the country. Students and experts had gathered to present their ideas and inventions. When Homer presented his rocket project, it quickly attracted a large crowd. He explained his innovative nozzle design and demonstrated how his rocket worked. His presentation impressed many judges and participants. Some competitors even believed that Homer's rocket could win the championship. But the next morning, when Homer arrived at his booth, he was shocked. All the project entries had disappeared. The final decision was supposed to be announced that day, and suddenly everything seemed uncertain. Homer quickly contacted his friends for help. However, rebuilding the model required access to machines inside the coal mine. Unfortunately, a workers' strike had shut the mine down. When Homer's mother learned about the situation, she bravely walked through the crowd of protesting workers and went straight to the mine. There she confronted Homer's father and demanded that he help their son. She even threatened to leave him if he refused. Eventually, Homer's father softened and decided to resolve the strike. Soon the workers returned to their jobs and spent the entire night rebuilding Homer's model. Later that night, Homer's mother called him and told him the model was finished and already on its way to him. Hearing this filled Homer with relief and excitement. For anyone facing challenges, the support of family can become their greatest strength and often gives people the courage to continue. The next day, Homer calmly presented his project to the judges. During the awards ceremony, when the judges announced his name, Homer stood frozen in disbelief. Only when his name was called again did he realize he had truly won the competition. All his struggles and hard work turned into loud cheers and applause that echoed throughout the hall. Soon, many prestigious schools began approaching Homer to discuss scholarship opportunities. Seeing all of this happening around him, Homer felt almost overwhelmed, as if his mind had stopped working for a moment. When Homer returned to his town filled with pride, he was welcomed with loud cheers and applause. His mother hugged him warmly, proud of everything he had achieved. When Homer asked about his father, he learned that his father had not arrived yet. Homer wasn't too worried at first, but when he asked about Miss Riley, he was shocked to hear that her condition had worsened and that she had been admitted to the hospital. Without wasting any time, Homer rushed to the hospital to see her. Despite the pain and weakness she was experiencing, Miss Riley still greeted him with a gentle smile and congratulated him on his success. Looking at the medal in Homer's hand, she said proudly, "I will always tell my students that I was the one who taught you." Homer remained silent, trying to hold back the tears in his eyes. On his way back, Homer found his father working. He invited him to watch the rocket launch that afternoon. But once again, his father refused, saying he had work to do. Homer quietly returned. Although he and his father often disagreed, both of them believed strongly in their own paths. In Homer's mind, his father had always been a hero. In the coal mining town where they lived, building rockets and mining coal were not so different. Both were journeys driven by dreams and determination. This would be their final rocket launch. They named the rocket in honor of Miss Riley as a tribute to her inspiration. A much larger crowd than usual had gathered to watch the launch. Homer took out his medal and thanked everyone who had supported him along the way. He even thanked Miss Riley, who could not be there that day. Just then, Homer noticed his father standing quietly among the crowd. Homer walked up to him and invited him to launch the rocket. His father nodded slightly, still feeling a little embarrassed. As the crowd began counting down, Homer's father pressed the launch button. The rocket soared into the October sky, carrying dreams and hopes with it. Everyone looked upward. That sky represented their future. Filled with emotion, Homer's father looked at his son with immense pride and finally understood the depth of his determination. At that unforgettable moment, as he gently placed his hand on Homer's shoulder, the distance between father and son disappeared forever. And that is where the story ends.